Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, today I want to simplify the art of risk-taking, especially as it comes to creative design. Now, my guest today, her name is Kristin Banta, and she's the creative visionary behind Kristin Banta Events. She's the leading authority in today's world of luxury event planning, consulting with individuals and corporations on client service, experience, and conceptual design. Now, you might recognize this face and this voice when you hear her because she's appeared as a weekly wedding expert for Hallmark Channel's Home and Family. She's the host of the Style Network's Keep the Party Moving, a featured designer on Mark Burnett and DreamWorks series for TNT, which is Wedding Day. And you might remember her from My Big Fat Geek Wedding, and she was a guest judge on Food Network's Cupcake Wars, and of course her own Bravo special, The Ringleader, which re-aired for an encore presentation as The Wedding Party. So, I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast today, Kristin Banta. Hey, Kristin.
Hey, Mary.
I'm so glad you're here, and I can't wait to really dive into this conversation with you today. Now, here is the deal. When you are a small business owner or, really have a set of clients and you really want them to think bigger, better, outside the box, this is where being smart and taking calculated risk really is a skill that you need to have. So let me back up and say this. Where do you find inspiration when you are pulling together the event designs for your client events? Like, where do you get inspiration first?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I think that there are so many areas where we can retrieve the inspiration that we need when all of a sudden we have this vast, big project in front of us, and we're trying to figure out how to give it life. And for me, it really depends upon what the project is. Sometimes it's about diving into films and kind of going back through my library of different films from a certain period. Sometimes it's really about digging into architecture and seeing who's doing interesting things. Maybe it's interior design, and I start doing a deep dive into both magazines and blogs. Sometimes it's fashion websites or going through magazines or the works of certain designers that I absolutely love, where I know that they have a certain edge that's going to awaken that part of me to help me figure out my path through to what vision we're going to come up with to make it an original design.
And I find that, your portfolio of work, you've been in business for 16 years, is that right?
That's right.
You have done so many events over the years, whether it's weddings or large-scale corporate experiential events as well. The breadth of your portfolio is, expansive. There's so much there to it that I imagine also every single event you're reinventing yourself, you're reinventing your process. So it's not just, churn it out. That one sort of looks like the other one, which sort of looks like the other one, right?
That's right. Well, I think for me, if we are repackaging something and reproducing the same work that somebody's already seen, then we're failing. Yeah. I personally would feel as though my spirit was dying a little bit. I think that's what makes me feel alive. That's what makes me want to wake up, is figuring out how we can come up with an entirely new vision that I want to live in for that day. And if I've already been there, I want to travel someplace new. And so I certainly want to make sure that we're transferring that same journey and experience to our clients. So we have to reinvent every single time. And that is a little scary. I can't tell you how many times I've had these feelings where I sit with the project in front of me and I don't know my way through yet. And there's always invariably there's some sort of moment where I'm like, oh, I was smoke and mirrors. I have nothing. I have no vision, and then sooner or later I'm like, okay, I got this. I know exactly what it's going to be. And there's a wonderful moment when that happens, when the light bulb comes on and you see what this world should be, and the world kind of opens up, and that's the feeling that I'm looking for.
And I bet every single creative that's listening to this episode has said, yep, girl, I felt that too. I think everybody goes through a bit of that cycle in the creative design brainstorming process of oh, this is great. Oh, this is crap. Oh, no, actually, this is great again. And, it's universal regardless of what you do for business, right?
Oh, I think so too. And certainly there's always the end where I look around, and even sometimes on those days where I'm looking around, I think, oh yeah, I totally nailed this. This is so rad.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain moments where I absolutely will look to my peers or team around me and be like, this is cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this? I think this is pretty cool. Do you think this is cool? I mean, we're never sure. I mean, art is something that is completely subjective, and it's how the individual responds. I mean, one of the things that we really champion here is this idea that it's okay to take risks. They pay off when there is a polarizing nature to what we're doing. And I know that's sort of word polarizing scares people, but I think that, it's important to start conversations by not having everyone have a benign reaction, but to having, different reactions throughout the attendees and who is experiencing an event. It's fine if somebody loves it and somebody hates it. We can't be afraid that's, what if that person doesn't love it? That's okay. We just don't want them to be in the middle. We just don't want them to be okay, because at least now they're talking.
Yes, and that's it. I mean, I think that's what makes live events so special when they're done well, is that they're connecting people in unexpected ways, and there's that delight and surprise element too as well. So when you are collecting ideas, I mean, where do you keep it in journals? Do you put it on a Pinterest board? Like, how do you gather all the ideas that are swirling around in your everyday life?
I want to tell you that it's super organized, and I've got this wired in, and it all goes into this perfect little binder that sits on my desk next to me, or my bedside table. It's kind of all over the place. I mean, sometimes I use Pinterest. I actually think it's an amazing search engine. I think sometimes it can be stifling. Because it can be limiting, which is odd considering the vastness of what's available. But for me, it's a great tool because I may have some sort of idea where I come up with, and I look for it. And if it's not there, I can at least figure out, okay, well, if we partner photo A with photo B with photo C, that's kind of what I'm after. And at least it's a way of trying to help articulate what it is that I'm looking for if it doesn't exist yet. So that's a great tool. And then, of course, I do have the journals, and sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, that would be such a cool idea. Let's write that down. And hopefully someday somebody wants to do some sort of this type of event that I've come up with in my mind.
Yeah. And you guys are known for really producing and designing non-traditional event spaces and experience. So how would you define the word experiential? What does the experiential event design mean to you?
Well, I like that you bring this up, because this is something that is being thrown around a lot right now. And, having kind of a background that has meshed my marketing degree with my production background and degree, that's where, for me, this merger within the realm of academia has now kind of come to life in this business that I've built. But we've been doing this for a long time. And I don't say that in the sense of like, well, everybody's talking about experiential, and we've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
I think that we're not alone in that. There's many that have as well, and maybe they didn't know that that's what it was. But experiential for me, and really, I think overall why this is being thrown around so much is leaning to a product that does two things. It allows people to connect. It allows people to interact. And often in doing those two things, it gives an opportunity for measurable content that is being put out into the universe, which has the stamp of the event on it. And really, at the end of the day, that's how we're seeing our return on our investment for events. That's why events are having a beautiful boom right now, is because we have this incredible tool that's allowing us to do just that. It's allowing us to connect, to bond. It's establishing loyalty. And it's giving us this measurable content because people are excited, and they don't just want to be connecting. That's a huge thing. They also want to take photos of themselves connecting, then push that out, which only benefits us. So we are now designing with that intention behind it. Give them what they want. This need for connection is not new. However, it is something that's really indicative of today's consumer. That sort of need to be a part of something and be in it and to interact with it is something that really kind of defines today's consumer and today's audience.
Well, And that's what I think is so fascinating about, right now, present day, 2019, the time of recording this episode, is that I feel like modern human culture is all about being sucked into your phone and, feeling like you're connected to people online through social media or whatever. But that's a false reality of connection. And that's why the resurgence of live events is so incredibly powerful right now, especially for brands, is because everyone, I dare say, I'll be bold and say everyone, wants to feel connected, true connection. And they're not, it's sort of like, eating a giant slice of cake and feeling a little bit empty afterwards, because it's like it's not fulfilling. So that's why brands are starting to get really smart about, well, wait a second, people want to get together in face, in human to human interaction. And so then people, brands are getting smart and hiring people like yourself to create those, touch point moments in person. And then the people also will post it on social media. So that's what I think is so beautiful and fascinating about the cyclical cycle of where we are as humans. I mean, love and connection, these are basic tenets of what people desire the most, right?
It's a bizarre world right now, and it's funny because we're designing this whole sort of very, very thoughtful and very intentional realm for our audience or consumers to interact with and to experience. But I myself, I don't selfie. I just don't. I don't take photos. I really have this strange thing where I want to be in the moment. I have very few photos of my son. Yeah. I just want to be with him. So I'm kind of actually coming from a very different place, but yet that place actually matters in terms of, giving a different perspective when designing events, because, essentially we are trying to design experiences for attendees to interface with that gets them off their phone, but it drives them right back to their phone at the same time, because now we want the outcome of that experience for them to want to take photos of it and to want to post it. And, everything is kind of, it can't just be a stagnant thing. It has to be, let's get them off so they connect, and now let's get them back on. And it's this very strange way of designing, but though I don't personally connect to it, I find it very interesting. And we're going to constantly have to be reactive in this realm because it is shape-shifting, and we have to kind of continue to pay attention to how our attendees are interacting with what we're doing for them to constantly shape-shift to make sure it's still relevant to what they need.
Yeah, and capturing their attention, because I think people have such short attention spans now that how do you keep a person from, when they walk into the doors of an event or a pop-up, to not go straight down to their phone and isolate again? So why, on a big picture level, why do you feel risk-taking is so darn important, right? Like on a deeper level, why is it so important to you?
It gets down to the simple word disruption. If we are not awakening people from this sort of trance that they're in attached to their devices, I'm going right back into what you and I were talking about, because that's exactly what's driving it. We need to disrupt. We need to awaken. If we don't do things that are polarizing and that thereby take risks, we don't get their attention. And of course, we don't want to elicit negative attention, but we can't be afraid to disrupt. It's that simple.
Yeah, and move people to take action, right, as well.
Absolutely. We can't if we are still sort of in that trance. We are not being given, that spark that even leads us down the path to a cause for action. And it starts with that first spark. So, that's where disruption, I think, has a purpose within the current marketplace.
Right. Inspiring people to think, inspiring them to connect, to go deeper. And, you had mentioned to me offline, like waking people up from the rat race of life. And I think that there is power in that in live events. So I should back up and say, like, the events that you produce, we are not not talking about a conference table with some styrofoam plates and some coffee on the table. Like, I think everybody's probably clear on that that's listening to this episode. I mean, you are doing amazing things with your client events. So talk to us about an event you've had maybe recently where you felt like you have taken risks and they totally paid off.
I mean, I think that, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I think sometimes when we start talking about the work and what we do, I do want to kind of quantify that. And that so often, when we hear big events and large scale or luxury, all of these things, are obviously areas in which we dwell. But it's not necessarily, I think, what people associate in terms of all of the events having to have 1 million flowers and to have gigantic things on tables. And for me, sometimes the events that we have done that we are most proud of really pushed with what budget was available. They sometimes got down to very simple things that we used, that we did in an artistic way that made people think or that gave people a wow moment. But, it was something very simple. It was 5,000 suspended origami cranes. It wasn't, 9 million roses in, containers and a cake on a swing. Nothing is wrong with that. But I do want to quantify because we all design in different ways. We all identify opulence in a little bit of a different a different way. So I think when we look at things that we've done that we're proud of, many times it's the design is more of one of restraint than one would often associate in this sort of area that we occupy within the events industry. I mean, I think one of our most recent was one that we're really proud of because we had a film that we did the premiere after party for. Yeah. A film called The Favorite, which we worked with Fox Searchlight on. And what I loved about that challenge was that we had this amazing film that was so robust with just a playground of things that we could design with. And, we brought them back in. So for the premiere after party, we certainly, with a lot of that particular type of event, we don't necessarily we're not going to rebuild the set. Right. That set has been done in a perfect way that can never be touched. But we do want them to mentally revisit that experience. So we have to do it in a different way while bringing them back into discussing it, bringing it back into, oh, right, remember when that moment happened? What did you think about that? That's what we want. So many times we'll take an Easter egg sort of method, which we did for Fox Searchlight's film prior to that. We did a very similar thing for 3 Billboards, wherein we kind of, took this design idea of bringing them back into moments of the film, but planting these tactile, interactive things that they could kind of touch on to bring them back in conversation. For 3 Billboards, rather than putting flowers on the table, we put mini turtles on the table because that was the pet of one of the main characters. So when we think about designing it that way, that's one tactic. But in the case of The Favorite, we took that tactic and we had to also represent the polarity of the two characters. So we kind of layered over this 18th century idea, this idea of like punk rock London in the 80s, and did kind of this anarchist spray painting on tapestries. So it was kind of this interesting layering. But then we were handed an additional challenge, which is what made this project even more interesting. It got more interesting even further because we got the opportunity to do their For Your Consideration event. And it was the same film. Can't change that. Yep. But we had to do an entirely different concept because it was the same audience essentially showing up. So we had to totally rethink how do we tell the tale of this film in a way that brings the audience back in while giving them an entirely different point of view within the realm of 4 walls and the event space as our palette and our canvas, so to speak. Yeah. And to put them into a totally different thing, but for the very same film. So it was kind of fun. So we took a very different tactic and kind of made it very, very modern, but brought them more into the black and white principle that you saw throughout the film, and kind of layered more of an 18th century into the styling on top of this very mod looking event. So it was a totally different thing. But that design challenge is one that we really cherish because, at first it's like, and then it's like, hey, let's find our way through. How do we do this? There's got to be a way. Even though it's the same film, we can do this. I just don't know what it looks like yet.
Yeah.
And that's when we feel alive. Those are great moments.
And that's when the designer side in you comes alive, I imagine, because then you start to think about all five senses in designing that event space, that experience, and how to incorporate that surprise and delight moments. I love that mention of kind of sprinkling in Easter eggs for people to find, because I think that that's where the magic is, right? It's almost like having an inside joke with the attendee, and they go, oh gosh, can you believe that? And then that's the moment they start tweeting things and taking pictures and posting it on Instagram. And then for the brand's, advantage, this is where your message, your event goes viral. That's the secret.
I love that. I love that you mentioned inside joke. That's it, Mary. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And because now that you're not just interacting, you're interacting almost with a secret. And when we talk about the Easter egging principle, one of the reasons why I love that design tactic is that we can actually layer beginner, intermediate, and advanced layers within the Easter egging towards like how much were you paying attention? So some of these things that have been planted in there are a little bit more obtuse than others. But if you were paying attention, that particular inside joke, you may be in on that one. And it may be fewer of you that are, but that's what makes it fun, is who's interacting with what, and how closely were you watching, because it's in here. So I love that stuff. It's a great way to have that interactivity and to bring people back without being so literal, because we're especially in that medium, we're not supposed to recreate the film.
Right.
We're just supposed to get them talking about it.
Well, and I imagine because you guys are based in Los Angeles, you have the potential to do a lot of movie studio work like this. So premiere parties and all sorts. Is there one that you really, really want to design in the coming future or in the year ahead? Or have a great idea that you're just like, oh, it'd be so great if we could do this?
Well, I mean, oh God, there's so many. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
I must say, from a stylistic standpoint, as a Wes Anderson fan, given the opportunity to design something for one of his films, because he has such a distinctive style as a filmmaker and director, I mean, I think that would be a delight, because anytime anyone has such distinction and point of view as Wes Anderson does, that designing for a designer that has such command of what his thing is, there's a delight to that. And certainly, I mean, I'm pointing out one of many, but, it's the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah. So let's change gears a little bit. I know that we have quite a few wedding planners that listen to our podcast. So what is your advice to him or her on how to make weddings more experiential?
Well, I'm glad that you say this, because, the weddings shouldn't be the forgotten kid in this realm of experiential. There, we say it again. We're still designing for the same audience. So the same attendees that are the consumers that are attending, our corporate events, are the same attendees that we're essentially designing for to tell a couple's story in the case of a wedding. I love weddings. I will always do weddings, because it is the most unique and interesting realm in which a designer can have at their fingertips to storytell. Because you've got two people that had full lives before, and all of their interests and all of their passions and all the things that all of their inside jokes with their people that they grew up with and their families and these, very diverse interests. And now they're coming together, and now they're also this kind of entity together. I mean, there's just so much there. But I think when we talk about experiential, we first have to back it up and first really look at being willing to take risks within the wedding space. I think that often in this particular area of the events industry, there is a tendency to feel as though one can't take risks. And that's not true. this is an area where more than any other area, it's imperative that we do, because, we think, oh, risk taking on this day, we can't do that. We have one shot at this. Well, exactly, but we have one shot at it. So it shouldn't just be poignant. It should be ironic. It should be funny. Mm-hmm. It should have, humor, irreverence, irony. And that can coexist alongside of poignance at all times. It can, just because it's funny doesn't mean it still can't be sensitive and thoughtful. But to get there means we can't get lazy. We can't just color block the wedding. I don't care what their colors are. It doesn't matter what their colors are. They shouldn't even have colors. Let's look at what space made them get that feeling of, oh my gosh, we can see it. We want to get married here.
Yeah.
Let's start there. And then let's figure out what story we want to tell. What do we want to bring out? What makes them laugh? What are they passionate about? What are their things? Mm-hmm. What do they say to each other? What are those little slogans where everyone's like, oh, that's totally them? All of these things matter. And so, I think that when we look at how we can translate the experiential realm into weddings, we first need to go down sort of the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride on who this couple is and how we're going to tell their story. And then we can start pulling out ways in which the guests can actually interact with their story. Mm. They want to as much as anyone, because they are that audience. And that is what makes them feel something. They're the same audience that's taking pictures at a corporate event. They still want to take photos at your wedding. And it can and should be more than just a photo booth.
Yeah, and I love that. I love incorporating the thought that, it's all about the couple and telling their story and what the arc of the story throughout the day, night, weekend, what have you, is. And again, through the live event experience. So true. So please don't just build something off of a Pinterest board and put some mason jars on a table and call it a day. Like, go further. Which leads me to my next question. So whether it's a wedding or let's bring it back to brands, actually. Like, if you've got an incredible idea and a creative vision and there are some risks involved in that division, how do you get a client on board with your creative vision? If they are saying, well, I just want this and that's enough. But like, how do you get them to get on board and really see the creative vision that you've got that requires more risks at hand?
I mean, I think anytime that's what's a little different about, artistry within this medium, is that it's not enough to just say, okay, I painted this picture, here it is, you like it or you don't. It's more than that. We have investors, we have, dollars behind it. We have to justify every dollar spent.
Yeah.
So as a result, when designing something, it's really important that we think through every nuance of the design and that we can justify it. Why is it there? Why do I believe that this is the best course of action? If we're doing this, here's the outcome that I anticipate will be what we can expect and how it will benefit us by going down this particular path. And I think it's really about walking people through it. And no one can really picture what's in anyone's mind. So having an ability to articulate the why and the intention behind the design. If there's no intention behind it, it's going to be lost on your audience anyway. There has to be intention. And that should be something that's measurable and can be explained. And I think that's how we get our clients behind things, because really we all just want it to succeed, don't we? We want everyone to have a great freaking time, and we want metrics on the back end that can show us that, so that we can feel safe and we can show that to our bosses, right? And we're all answering to somebody.
Yeah. And I think what I'm hearing you say there is when you're working with a brand or PR agency or a movie studio, like for one of the premiere parties, like you have to be really good at defining what does success look like for you guys? Like, what is the goals and objectives of why you're having this live event experience in the first place, right? So that you're not throwing extraneous money at, nothing and just noise. Like, you're creating things that it has a purpose and a reason in it. It does go towards the why, right?
That is absolutely correct. I mean, that's it. You said it, which is, defining what does success look like. No one throws an event for no reason, even if the reason is seemingly superfluous of like, I just want to have a great freaking time.
Yeah.
Great. Well, okay, then that's your motivation. That's what success looks like for you. So let's show everybody a great freaking time. But beyond that, and I think that's at the end of the day, to some degree, that's always going to be in the bag of what success looks like. But we may have other things in the bag with it. It may be we want to, give people a cause to action, right? We may want to leave an impression. We may want to get people talking. We may want to incite brand loyalty. I mean, whatever it is, but, we have to be clear on what that objective is. And, to your point, what does success look like? That question needs to be asked at the beginning of every journey with every client and every project.
And you did an activation recently with a PR agency for a brand called Bumble. So I imagine there was a lot of working together with the PR agency to come up with a design and understand the goals and objectives behind why are they doing this pop-up? Why are they doing this in the first place? Can you tell us more about the design process there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we have developed we have a pretty robust client roster, which is wonderful. And within that, we do work with a number of PR firms because they themselves, they have their events people. They are, there are very, large teams that are equipped to take the project, of marketing a company through all the various stages. Obviously, events are one of those. Where we've had this great opportunity is that we can fulfill what is sometimes not always available in-house, which is the design arm.
Yeah.
And, that's become a kind of a part of our roster where we're really stepping in and they are the producers and we can step in and say, okay, what are the objectives? Now let's guide this project from start to finish within this particular area. Let us help you shine. Let us figure out how to tell the story from the visual elements, the culinary elements, and we can take over that side of it while they are dealing with all the other things that only they can do, from hiring the influencers, getting them on board, working on the social media campaigns, working on the development of the list of attendees and getting them there and getting the press that warrants the overall machine to continue down the path. So that's what's been a really interesting part of the last few years is how that partnership has kind of evolved. Bumble's a great example in that, we had the opportunity to work with a PR firm on that. So the end client was Bumble, and we worked with them as they were the event producer to design their first activation for Coachella weekend. First weekend, and this was their first time having a presence during the festival weekend, which was a fantastic challenge to figure out how do you cut through the clutter of all of the events taking place during the festival to make sure that we're driving people to ours. And it was great. And so we did, a winter in the middle of the desert, and it was a fantastic opportunity from a design standpoint for us.
Mm-hmm. And I think you guys had tubes of people sliding down snow mountains in the middle of a desert. I mean, there's so many moments of surprise and delight in that. And I think it's really interesting just to put a pin in the map of what you said. I think what you do to help PR agencies is very smart in that, PR agencies, not just like they have got one client, they've got a massive portfolio of clients that they're helping and servicing in many different ways. And so that, your firm comes in and offers that powerhouse design arm to those live event experiences where they just simply don't have the manpower sometimes or even the time to do it, to come up with creative, crazy ideas on how to make their event special. So yeah, I think that's a huge asset.
It's a great opportunity for us. I mean, because they themselves, working with creatives is it's only great because together we can figure out how to really elevate as a team. And so, many times they are doing a lot of the creative from the front end, which is like, here's the concept, here's what we pitched the client. Yeah. Now, how do we bring it to life? And that's where for us, we're like excited kids on the first day of school. We're like, let us help you. Let's figure out what could this look like, and breathing life into this concept that you've pitched the client. yeah, we want to, let us help you make this work, and let us make you look good. I mean, that's a really fun area of the work that we do, because they do have so many clients, and there is such a robust roster of different things that are coming from these companies, which is very exciting.
And I imagine you also can help them, put real numbers to the table of like, okay, well, this is what that would cost, and like, this is how you actually execute and implement, crazy snow mountain in the middle of the desert, and how does it even work? And, and I also imagine that there's people listening to this episode who are not event planners, and they're thinking, well, wow, that's really interesting to think about, like, for lack of better words, a micro event experience happening inside a greater, festival like Coachella or South by Southwest or any of those, right? So that's an event in essence, even if it is a booth, even if it is a pop-up, even if it is, something that seems smaller, that's not necessarily a ballroom and 100 people for a sit-down dinner. I mean, live events is all things, right?
Absolutely. And that's what's the most fun about this world that we're in right now, is that, where live events have gone, there's so many different, sort of tributaries that are coming from this overall umbrella of live events, which is, it's fantastic, because this has become, one of the most powerful tools for action from those that are in attendance.
And you had mentioned to me in a offline that, there's also this process of having a bit of a bake time of design, letting an idea sort of percolate over time and letting it grow and simmer. Can you tell us more about what you mean by that?
Well, okay, so this goes back down to the the earlier topic of initial panic. Oh my gosh, what will it be?
Yeah.
I think that sometimes we just need to let an idea kind of simmer as it starts to find its way. It bubbles to the surface in terms of how it will be brought to life, and what that will look like. Sometimes we have to kind of dig in and then just sit on it for a minute, and it will always come. I mean, that's the thing. It's the panic is part of just
the design process.
Yeah, exactly. It's like writer's block, where you're like, I have nothing, I'll never write a book again. And then, of course, I mean, one gets there.
Yeah.
As Jeff Goldblum said, life finds a way.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the idea with kind of letting things simmer sometimes. We can't overwork it. Creativity needs to sometimes just be left untouched for a minute, so that we can kind of walk around it and see it from a different side.
And then that's where I think the creative risk-taking comes into play, because once you let it sit for a bit, then you can start asking the question or finishing the statement, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Like, wouldn't it be cool if this lounge had that, or if this welcome entrance had this? Yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that also becomes, this wonderful part of working with fellow creatives. I may come up with an idea, but, everybody has voices, and we all see things differently. It's a wonderful thing when you can get people jumping in and contributing. That just makes it even better.
Yeah.
It shouldn't begin and end with just what I come up with. I mean, that's what's great about the art of collaboration.
So obviously design trends come and go. You may or may not follow them, or even, pay any heed to them when you're designing for one-of-a-kind events for your clients. But do you have any predictions of where you think live events or experiential events are headed in the next couple of years, especially for brands? What do you think's on the horizon?
It's interesting. I mean, the kind of overall, this is very general, but I think it applies. We've talked a lot about risk taking.
Yeah.
We have entered into a space where I believe brands are starting to see that there is a new way of spending, and what that return looks like, and that this is what it is. It's creating these experiences, and taking risks is really a part of it, because we have to, I'll touch on it again, we have to cut through a lot of clutter to be noticed. So I think as we continue to see events going down this path of the experiential, we will see more and more risk taking and events taking shape as an art form, as opposed to, think about where we've come. We've come from a time when, it was a chicken dinner and a floral arrangement on a polycotton linen.
Yeah.
And that was exciting.
Yeah.
That would never fly now. That is no longer an option. You might as well set your money on fire. And that's where I think we are headed. I know it's broad, but it's relevant. It's relevant to the times, and the times are kind of calling for that. So, it is important to analyze trends to some degree because they matter. That's what our clients are being influenced by.
Yeah.
But what we constantly have to do is figure out how to transcend them. We cannot design our events in real time with trends. We can't. We have to try and look at it, see what it is. If nothing else, just pump it with air, exaggerate it, and then throw it out there. If it has to be tied to a trend, or to figure out where that's moving, and to kind of take the trend 5 miles down the road.
Yeah.
But it's about know the rules before you break them, right?
And I imagine also that you might be booking clients now, but the event doesn't happen until another 6, 9, 12 months away. So you can't really design on what's hot right now because, well, that could be old news by the time the actual event comes around. So you guys are based in Los Angeles, but you do events all over the world. So if people wanted to connect with you guys, we'll put the link in the show notes, but you can go to her website, KristinBanta.com. That's Kristin with 2 I's. And where could people connect with you or your team online? Where do you hang out the most on social media?
Instagram is always a great place to find us. We're there. So come visit us.
And you have a very beautiful feed on Instagram. Certainly if you are an event planner or designer, there's lots of inspiration that can be gathered from even your own feed. So we'll put those links in the show notes for people so that you can get connected with Kristin and her team. So I want to switch gears and ask you a few questions that we'd like to ask all of our guests. And again, thank you so much for your time and, sharing your wisdom and your creative process, because I think this is fascinating, not just for event planners, but just anybody who's a creative and how they do their design process.
You're a tremendous, and you're so much fun to talk to. I feel like we could have this conversation for 5 hours. You're a wonderful interviewer, so it's absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you. So tell me, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or maybe poking holes and challenging your belief system right now?
Interesting. So I'm on 2 currently. The first one is one that I'm actually revisiting, which is the works of Florence Scovel Shinn. Really interesting writer. She was just a pioneer in terms of the concept of manifest destiny, and just way ahead of her time. So the works of Florence Scovel Shinn is a must. And then meanwhile, I'm reading a book that just in its title, it obviously makes a lot of sense, which is Unfuck Yourself.
Yes, yeah, it's so great. I love that book.
That's my other. They're a good partnership right now.
I love that book. Yeah, we'll put links to both of those in the show notes. So tell us, who's one person in your network that you just feel is up to brilliant things and that we should shine a spotlight on, and maybe, who knows, potentially have them on the podcast soon?
Interesting. Okay, well, can I give you 2?
Sure.
I'm going to give you in industry and out.
Okay.
For me, I think that in terms of event design, he continues to be a leader and a visionary, and is just the perfect example of doing things with a distinctive point of view and being willing to do them differently and take risks, and that's David Stark. I think he does just beautiful work. Respect. Outside of our industry, but as a fellow woman and an entrepreneur that I think is just absolutely crushing it right now is Allie Webb. She has created Dry Bar, and now she's just come out with Squeeze. What an amazing female entrepreneur that is just kind of shattering all for I think all of us as women. I think she's a wonderful example. I really respect what she's doing.
Very cool. Well, we'll put links in the show notes for both of those people and reach out to them soon. I think they're Perfect recommendations.
I will tune in.
So I believe that gratitude and simplicity actually go hand in hand. Tell me, what's one thing that you're grateful for right now in your life?
My team, and that is, my team is my family, and so that's my immediate family and my working family. Without them, there's just they're all the things.
Yeah. So again, people can connect with you online at Kristin Banta on social media, Instagram, and at your website, kristinbanta.com. So I'm going to leave you with one last question. And again, thank you so much for your time today. So someone somewhere is listening to this episode. She's inspired. And maybe she's got a big pitch presentation that she's about to put forth in front of a client, but she's a little bit nervous because it's a little bit out there. It's a little bit of risk for them to take. What's one thing that you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment? There's no room to be afraid if you are taking risks and trying to make people think. That's it. That's really the goal. And if you're following that path, you're going down the right place. It will succeed. Do it. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. It'll be great. Kristin, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. This was a delight.